William Kerr Martin was born in 1856 in Whiting Bay on the island of Arran. He grew up in a croft which needed regular maintenance. There would be times of planting, harvesting and peat cutting with the family from an early age. Like many in the island community, Gaelic was spoken in the family. However, it was common for the language to be discouraged at the time. Whiting Bay was once home to a herring fishery, although this was limited by the seasons. Being at the very southern end of the Hebrides and lower reaches of the Clyde coast, Arran saw lots of sea traffic, most vessels then being driven by sail. Coastal shipbuilding on the nearby Clyde and Ayrshire coasts were beginning to focus on steam vessels. During William Martin's life, new developments on Arran brought substantial change to local industry there, bringing change to the lives of many in the island population. As the mainland's influence began to reach the island, the first pier was built in Brodick, with future landing developments covering other parts of the island. William Martin spent his childhood in view of the Ayrshire and Clyde coasts. Arran began to see the new steam-powered Clyde vessels bring in regular city visitors. When ships came in, children would run to the jetty, where the arrival of tourists would create great excitement. New employment could be found at times of their ever more regular arrival, helping all the passengers with baggage and freight from the ships. Portering people and their belongings to and from their tourist lodgings became more significant sources of income for local folks, who started to stray away from the mainstays of fishing and crofting. William Martin would have had to travel north to reach the new pier at Brodick, where on the horizons constant flows of sea traffic could be seen. While the newfound tourism industries came to provide new opportunities for islanders, it wasn't for everyone. The island was changing, but many were still living in poverty. The horizon gave a clear indication of better prospects beyond the islands. For a young William Martin, the lure of the mainland saw him seeking work away from his home. He left Arran for an apprenticeship on the Ardrossan shipyards. Industry brought a significant change to William Martin's life. In the Ardrossan shipyards, as an apprenticed ship's carpenter, he learned his trade. The ships leaving Ardrossan at the time were fishing boats or small coastal cargo boats. In time, he would be out to sea, repairing ships on their journeys, under sail. They ventured to all reaches of the Clyde coast and further north to the Hebrides. Innovation in marine engineering made this an exciting time, with the widespread introduction of the iron-hulled and steam-driven vessels. On the other hand, seafaring could be a long and isolated experience that many chose in pursuit of their sole livelihood. Just as Arran was changing with the advent of tourism, so was the coastal tradition of shipbuilding, in which William Martin and many Gaels like him played a part.
Gunjan middagen små krietrau
Where do you do your singing now?
I
Wherever
do
you go?
aboard the boat
For yourself or for the...
for myself, like
So to keep in practice.
keeping the watch. That's the time for singing.
You mean in the hours of the night?
Yes,
right?
hours of the night. That's
Well,
what I do
great.
all my practice.
Do you sing just whatever comes into your mind? Do you have a sort of a...
Oh, whatever comes in my mind, and I usually give all my songs I run over, you see. Give them I run over during the 4 hours or 5 hours I'm on watch.
Be me se graun rifader or sorry wamse har wine es ist uns leicheri me can chi Jan Jijfs en ich Nak Bishinski Dol Yahi Na Weichsen Kreinen Teifikai Abaten Eiche Dol Shakat Get vaker have vaker grain Ri edi savatain Ver mi gekjaun na beken rein Smi klontjen felle fetag Torstors churchown, vi ser bau, es long a facul calais.
Journeying around the Outer Hebrides, William Martin arrived in Stornoway, where he met Joanna Lebenick MacLeod. Joanna too had links to seafaring. Her father was Danish, and they lived in Lewis. A time after that, William and Joanna married in Ardrossan, and were soon to settle in the areas of Glasgow, close to the ever-growing shipyards. His skills as a shipwright were in high demand. At that time, many Gaels began to migrate to the city for employment. Their familiarity with ships, the sea, and skills that went with it clearly marked out their transition to readily finding employment in the shipyards. The shipyards were a main employer in Govan and of vital importance to the livelihoods of many thousands of families in that Clydeside area. William Martin was employed in the shipyards in the early 1900s as a shipwright when yard-based, reverting to his journeyman skills when at sea. A daughter dying in infancy was such a common tragedy to growing families living in restricted tenement accommodation. The rest of the family made their lives further afield, staying on the mainland, emigrating to New Zealand, setting their paths by the prosperity afforded to William's family through employment found on the shipyards. They each lived until the late 20th century, but lost much of their spoken Gaelic, having settled in communities where little or none of the language was spoken. William Martin never returned to Arran. Joanna died in 1901 from pneumonia, such illnesses being largely untreated and almost impossible to control in the challenging tenement conditions with poor sanitation. In 1916, William died in Loch Gilphead, having been badly affected by his wife's death and having fallen to ill health thereafter. Looking back on the life of my great-great-grandfather, I think it's important to consider the bigger picture that he was part of throughout his life. William Martin lived through immense change in marine industry that contributed to where we see the Clyde-built heritage so well recognised today. The Clyde shipyards are, of course, a living memory for so many more. Two former Clydeside workers share their experiences of the shipyard and the influence it's had on their lives.
All my family worked in shipyards, my extended family worked in shipyards, my neighbours and friends all worked in shipyards. It was almost inevitable that I was going to go and work in a shipyard. And I don't think anybody ever questioned that. It was just a kind of rite of passage, really.
I lived in Govan, and it was only about 200 yards from the entrance.
So it was a cold, mucky, damp, dangerous place, but at the same time very exciting, and surrounded by characters as well. It was full of characters, so it was a magical place in many respects.
Oh yes, it was a very strong community, and of course there were quite a number of shipyards at that time.
I was following in the footsteps of my father and my grandfather and my uncles, and that was a big thing. Community, that the community identity was a huge thing there at that time, as it is in many communities still. So the idea that you would leave school and start walking to a shipyard every morning at 6 o'clock with your dad or your grandfather was very exciting, actually. Getting out of your bed and walking down that dark road at 6 o'clock in the morning with your grandfather to go and do the job that he's done for the previous 50 years. There's something very community-based about that. It's given me a massive sense of community and tradition. I think that's something that I've carried through my whole life.
Down on a sad old town as through the streets I walked, in silence past the old shipyard and down along the docks where once the work of many men so gracefully did lie. New towering cranes lay silent by the waters of the Clyde. A freighter's horn from across the bank came a-sounding on the wind, like some old song from a time long gone. As the breeze blew around, I was thinking then of ships and men and dreams carried on the tide. The times I've spent with friends content by the waters of the Clyde. May the wind that blows around these docks never bring you sorrow or grief. May happiness happiness flow like the tide below. Wherever you may be, walking home in the evening lights along the old docksides, I look back on a town where I was born, to the noise and to the lights, where the quiet ghosts of childhood streets still haunt the pale twilights. And I felt so sad just standing there by the waters of the Clyde. May the wind that blows around these docks never bring you sorrow or grief. May happiness flow like the tide below, wherever you may be. I left the town where I was born as the tide was still dancing, where the birds in the trees were singing in the breeze, and the rain was softly falling. Now and then I think of when I walked the old docksides, these times I've spent with friends content by the waters of the Clyde. May the wind that blows around these docks never bring you sorrow or grief. May